Mister? How do you operate this Twitter thing or this Instagram thing or whatever the heck? You're supposed to know all this stuff. Anyway, welcome back to the show.
Down the stretch we come in this episode number 1 of season 8 of Snowman in the Morning. And yes, I said season 8. Can you believe it? We're into season 8. And Mike Debate, one of my good buddies who's been riding shotgun with me for the last 3 seasons, or almost 3 seasons, has now joined me on the hotline. Good afternoon, Michael. Great to have you.
Always a pleasure. Always an honor, Brian. Thanks so much for having me, buddy.
Can you believe Can you believe this is the 8th season of the show, and 3 of those I've had you with me? This has been awesome.
It has been. It's been an amazing ride, and I'm so proud of the work that you do each and every day, bud. Keep continuing to crush it, and I'm just honored to be along for the ride and be a small part of it. So thank you very much. But no, I have absolutely no doubt. It's here's to the next 8 and beyond, my friend.
Thank you so much, folks. We've had some hiccups today, but you know what? We're getting through it. We're getting through it the best that we can. All right, let's get into this. We've done this division before. We've done divisions before in videos past, but with now full shows being back on the docket, I guiltily start with the NFC West, and y'all already know some of the thoughts I have with the NFC West. But we're gonna start with start with Arizona. And my question for Arizona, they got a few good pieces in the offseason and in the draft, but Cliff Kingsbury is still the coach, and my question is, can they put it all together?
Well, that's going to be the big question right now. I mean, Arizona definitely added some pieces. They added some pieces, obviously, on defense. J.J. Watt coming into town is huge news for them, obviously. Pairing him alongside Chandler Jones, that could be a very interesting defense to watch this year. But ultimately, it's going to begin and end with the offense, and it's going to begin and end with the relationship between Cliff Kingsbury as coach and also Kyler Murray as the quarterback. If they're able to take that jump, I like Arizona's chances of making some waves in this division and maybe even contending for that top spot. But at the same time, there's still a lot of question marks out there. You still have to be very cautious, very careful in terms of anointing them as saying, okay, yeah, they're ready to make that move, because there are some strong teams in that division. You can make the argument that each of them have the capability of winning. We're a little higher on one than as opposed to the other 3, and I think we're like-minded when it comes to that. But that's in no way any disparaging to the Arizona Cardinals. They had an impressive offseason. They had an impressive draft, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do with it all.
I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do with it all. Also, it's like you said, it's going to come down to the relationship between Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray, and Murray getting the ball to his receivers and getting him to his receivers often. Let's go to Los Angeles and take a look at the Rams. Now, folks, I preface by saying the Rams sacrificed their future not once, but twice. And now they're hanging on the strings of Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. They made a trade that sent Jared Goff to Detroit for Matthew Stafford. My first 2 questions. Why'd they make that trade? And why did they mortgage their future on 2 separate occasions?
That's a good question. I mean, there's no question about it. And you look at what the Rams were able to do, and you look at bringing in Matthew Stafford as opposed to Jared Goff. And I know Rams fans are going to look at this and they're going to say, you have no idea what you're talking about. We endured Jared Goff. We know what we're getting in Matthew Stafford. Last I checked, Jared Goff did lead this team to a Super Bowl berth just a couple of years ago. They're not beyond the realm of being able to do it. So, with the fact that the Rams have added a few, they've definitely added some talent. They've added Deshaun Jackson in free agency. Now all of a sudden you're pairing him alongside Robert Woods. Cooper Kupp is still there. Van Jefferson is going to come into his second year, ability. L.A. right now, you've got Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett as the tight end. There's a lot of talent there as well, and a decent, opportunity. They're in win now mode. But the offensive line to me is something that could be an issue. They put a lot of pressure on Andrew Whitworth to be their starting left tackle. Leonard Floyd is going to be on the edge, but one of the opportunities that they have with Whitworth here is they need to keep him healthy. If they don't, I'm worried about that Los Angeles offensive line, especially for a quarterback like Matthew Stafford that's so predicated on feeding off of stout protection. That's the thing that worries me about Los Angeles right now.
And you're talking about Andrew Whitworth, who is heading into his 15th season playing the offensive line. Nowadays, even with science, linemen don't last that long. So, A, kudos to Andrew Whitworth for lasting as long as he had, but B, you're putting a lot on his shoulders now to protect Matthew Stafford when the rest of the offensive line is not there yet.
Absolutely. And that to me is a big part of why I'm maybe not as high on the Los Angeles Rams as a lot of people are. I'm not denying their ability to contend. I'm not denying the talent. They've got a very talented team. And again, bringing back Andrew Whitworth at left tackle. Of course, on the flip side, you look at Leonard Floyd. He came back on the edge as well. Those are two big re-signings. But, they really, I guess on the free agency side of things, they didn't really have a whole lot to do. This, to me, is an area that needs to be addressed. It needs to be a concern for them. If they don't look to address that maybe in the second wave, like quote-unquote, a free agency, or
right,
maybe with some of these cut-downs where they try to beef up and get some depth talent at the offensive line, that could be an issue for them. That's the only thing that really worries me about the Rams right now.
Well, they're missing some spots on defense as well. Remember, when they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, they relied heavily on that defense, and that defense stopped New Orleans in New Orleans when they needed to. Now they have a stud in Aaron Donald, an absolute stud. They got another stud in Jalen Ramsey. My problem is, who's going to fill the rest of the unit?
Yeah, that's a good question. That absolutely is a good question. And look, I mean, you can get, the top play out of Aaron Donald all you want to. You can get top play out of Jalen Ramsey. Those guys are going to give you Pro Bowl caliber output, assuming that they're healthy when they're out on the field. They're just too talented not to. But there also is that element of the rest of the defense. Do they have enough on the interior of that defensive line to be able to stop the run, be able to allow their edge rushers to set the edge and facilitate the ability to get after the run game and to get after the quarterback? And do they have enough to, deepen that secondary beyond Jalen Ramsey? Ramsey is a tremendous corner, one of the best in the league. But at the same time, you need adequate bodies to be able to defend. You need depth there as well. And, the Rams right now have a very talented roster, but they have a very top-heavy roster.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to address some of the depth pieces in order for them to be serious contenders in consideration for this division.
Mike DeBay joining me here, one of the men in charge of FPC Radio Live as well as Locked On Patriots. Let's go to the Pacific Northwest and look at the Seattle Seahawks. It begins and ends with Russell Wilson. Yes, it does. But I will continue to repeat this point about Russell Wilson and the Seahawks as a whole. In the second half of each of the last 6 seasons, including 2 years ago when they had a chance to snatch the NFC West, they relied on Russell Wilson too much.
Yeah, they truly did, Bud. And look, the Seahawks still have Russell Wilson. That guarantees that they will at least be relevant.
Yep.
A lot of people say, it guarantees that they're going to be in the mix of things for a division title. I don't necessarily know I'm willing to go out on that limb just yet, but they will be in the mix. They'll be in the thought process, at least for the first half of the season, as Seattle starts to get themselves ready. And look, Russell is capable of winning them games. We've seen him do it. The problem with Seattle is a lot like the problem that we just described with the Los Angeles Rams, but I think it's a little more serious in Seattle, even with the off-season trade of Cade Jackson at right guard, and that's the offensive line. I don't necessarily know if Seattle did enough. The offensive line is mostly unchanged from last year, even though Jackson is a significant upgrade. Russell Wilson has been running around for his life on so many occasions, and when you rely on him, like you've said, be too reliant on Russell Wilson without adequate protection, going to break down, and that's exactly what you've seen in Seattle the last couple of years. Probably a more talented roster than their season finish, because of the fact that they couldn't get adequate protection. I'm a little worried about the Seattle offensive line and how they're going to be able to hold up. Even with the addition of Gabe Jackson, I still think this is a legitimate concern.
It should be a legitimate concern. Like I said, the last 6 years, they've relied on Russell Wilson entirely too much. Here's the other problem that Seattle faces going into the season, and I never thought I'd say this. No running game whatsoever to speak of.
Yeah, without any question. Without any type of solid running game to take the pressure off of Russell Wilson, this is going to be a problem. It is going to be an issue. And, they do have Chris Carson coming back, so, I know that definitely helps them in that department. But the loss of Carlos Hyde, it is really going to, I think, be something that this team is going to need, to address as well. Don't forget, at the wide receiver position, they lost David Moore, lost Philip Dorsett. Not huge names, but guys that are capable of coming in and playing roles. This is going to be Russell Wilson carrying the offense once again. And even though, I do like the addition of Gerald Everett at tight end, I think that the playmakers at the skill positions is something that is not going to really matter down the line if he's not getting the protection that he needs. That's how important it is to protect a guy like Russell Wilson. Even though he's got a few more playmakers this year, I still think it's going to be very difficult for him to overcome that if he continues to run for his life out there.
And therein lies the problem. The offensive line has deteriorated since the last time Russell Wilson has gone to the Super Bowl. And again, I bring up 2 years ago when they were competing with San Francisco for the West Division, especially that game in Seattle, they didn't have the line to make the play that they needed to make. And San Francisco's defense was dynamite. And even though they split the season series with them 2 years ago and they swept them last year, if you even look at last year, the Seattle defense could not contain that 49er running game.
Right. It couldn't. It really couldn't. And again, that's another area of concern. Seattle, obviously keeping Carlos Dunlap, that's a significant part of their ability to keep that pass rush intact. They also landed Kerry Hyder, a player you know very well from San Francisco.
Yep.
Akela Weatherspoon. These are players that, are coming in with knowledge of the division and with knowledge of the way these guys do business. So, I think right now, if you look at the way this team is, that front seven has added a little bit, but I think they still need help at cornerback. A lot of people are wondering why Richard Sherman hasn't returned to Seattle yet. I think there's a great reason for that. I think Richard is looking at this roster and saying, I'm on the downward, trend in my career. If I'm going to go and sign a place, even a place that I love playing as much as Seattle, I want to make sure I have a chance to win. I don't necessarily know if he sees that right now. So a deep playoff run, I think, is a very remote possibility at best for this team. But again, I'm a fan of Russell Wilson, and as long as he's there, you can't rule them out of anything. But they need to address some holes on this roster, and they need to do it, I think sooner rather than later if they're going to hope to contend.
I'll tell you the exact reason why Richard Sherman has not signed yet with Seattle, and I believe that is because he's going to stay in the Bay. That's his best chance to win, and I wouldn't be surprised, I would not be surprised, if San Francisco will start defensively, if San Francisco brings Richard Sherman into the offense and say, look, let's give you another couple of years. We got the pieces on the roster. We know how well you can play against your old mates 2 years ago. If there's any good place for Richard Sherman to win, it is where he is at right now in San Francisco.
Yeah, without any question. And I think that right now with San Francisco, he does have the best chance to win. And I think this is the team with the class in the division right now. I know Los Angeles had a big offseason, a lot of offseason splash with getting Matthew Stafford. We've talked about the upgrades that the Arizona Cardinals have made and bringing in a ton of free agents, whether it be A.J. Green or whether it be J.J. Watt or, whether it be, someone like some of the players that they've had a chance to bring in. They drafted Rondale Moore and Zayvon Collins, guys that we've gone out of our way to really talk up. But when you look from top to bottom and you look at the rosters of all the teams in this division, San Francisco just stacks up, very well. And I think a lot of people forget all the difficulty that San Francisco had last year.
Right.
This wasn't just a swoon after missing the Super Bowl. I mean, there were injuries that they battled throughout both sides of the ball. And it really, they were still able to run the ball efficiently with Jimmy Garoppolo on the shelf, with Jeff Wilson and Jerick McKinnon under, and even they had injuries throughout the year. Raheem Mostert was battling injuries throughout most of the year. So, you look at on the opposite side of the ball, Nick Bosa, D. Ford were gone. That really limited the production of guys like Arik Armstead and Deion Jordan to get to the quarterback. It's tough when you're missing pieces that you rely on to set the edge, to make key blocks, be in the right spot at the right time. That's where depth really comes into play. And just San Francisco was so gutted from that last year.
Yeah.
Really one of the worst types of, injury bugs that I've seen a team have to go through in quite some time. They're going to be a lot healthier this year. I like what they did in the draft. We talked about this. The fact that they were able to retain D. Ford. Trent Williams comes back in free agency to help that O-line. Kyle Juszczyk, who, in my opinion, is the best fullback in the NFL. We want to talk about best at the NFL at their position. You know how I feel about George Kittle.
Yes.
And you know how I feel about him, and knowing that I do believe that he is the best and most complete tight end in the NFL. So all of those factors put together, plus a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo, this is going to be the team to beat in the division this year.
And I know I shouldn't say it shouldn't be close, but I don't think it's going to be close. Yes, Russell Wilson makes Seattle relevant. Kyler Murray does the same for Arizona. We don't know what we're going to get out of Matthew Stafford, and that's not a slight against Matthew Stafford. It's not a slight against Matthew Stafford at all. But again, as you said very eloquently, when you look at this roster from top to bottom, when you look at the team's rosters in this division from top to bottom, the only place the West can run through with a complete team is San Francisco. Plus, they're healthy.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are. And that health is going to be what leads them back to prominence. And they're banking on that health as the reason they'll compete for the division and the conference title. Look, if George Kittle stays healthy, pass rush returns to where it was a couple of years ago, the 49ers are threatening the NFC. I don't care who the quarterback is. And again, we're like-minded. We believe it will be Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yep.
And I'm almost certain at this point that it will be, barring injury. I mean, that's always the great equalizer, as you know. But this team has the capability of competing on both sides of the ball. I love the addition of Alex Mack at center. I think that's going to really help to shore up that line. That is a big addition. And Brandon Ayuk, for all of the stuff that he takes in the press, I loved this pick when they made it. I loved him coming out of college. I really like the way he's progressing. I think he really stepped up and had a very prominent rookie season this last year. I look for him to take a huge jump as well. This is going to be a name you're going to hear a lot this year, and I look for him to be a favorite target of Jimmy in the Bay Area this year.
And not to mention Deebo Samuel coming off of an injury. He's going to be back healthy. And Jalen Hurd has missed 2 years. He's itching to get on the field. So this passing attack or this offensive attack, okay, because they love to run the football, this offensive attack at San Francisco is built with blockers, not just on the offensive line, but the tight end and George Kittle, Raheem Mostert, Kyle Juszczyk. They want to run the football, but if they have to go downfield, they have the weapons to do it. So, and even with the word coming out today that Julio Jones has requested a trade from Atlanta, I don't think it's in San Francisco's best interest to make that move. They have the weapons they need.
Absolutely. No, they have the weapons they need. And, when you look at what they have on this roster as opposed to what they've been trading to get, it's very, very difficult to see, why people are saying they need to be active here and get more weapons, bring more players in. I think this roster is very well put together. With the exception of adding players at the depth, I really think this team is well positioned to not only contend for a division title, but a conference title as well.
Yeah, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are on the same page. And when you didn't see them make a splash and during free agency or during the draft, except for the one trade where it brought them Trey Lance, you have to remember they knew what they needed to address in the offseason. The offensive line were the biggest pieces they needed to get. They bring in Alex Mack, and then they smooth everything out with some great rookies that is going to make a huge and significant impact immediately in San Francisco.
Right, without any question. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to need to make that impact, and they have the ability to make that impact. And, bottom line, it's going to be about how you perform on the field. Who's battle-tested? And you look at this division, that San Francisco 49ers team is battle-tested. We talk about the trip to the Super Bowl for the Los Angeles Rams a few years ago. The San Francisco 49ers are less removed from that, and that does count for something. When you're battle-tested, when you've gone to war with your guys in that locker room, and you've come as close as they came to winning the Super Bowl that year, there's unfinished business. I can guarantee you that the 49ers are going to be feeling that in the locker room this year, and I got a funny feeling that it's going to be Jimmy G and the guys that are going to be, leading this team to knowing exactly what they need to do, and I think they have the horses to do it on both sides of the ball.
Mike DeBay joining me here as we talk all things NFC West. Tomorrow we're going to switch to the NFC East, and we'll break down that division. Always a pleasure to have you on, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Oh, always my honor, always my pleasure. Again, congratulations on the 8 seasons. Looking forward to being a part of this and continuing to be a part of it. And like I said, here's to the